Ahsoka, Balance of Truth, Book 1, Chapter 22. Understand, I do not, the insistence upon going to Mustafar. In confronting Vader, you would only replace him. Master Yoda was beside himself in a way Ahsoka had never experienced, as the conversation began in full upon her return to the tiny hovel. Master, I understand the optics fully, but this is not what it seems, Ahsoka rebuked. There is more on that world that has yet to be understood, some of which involve Anakin, but not him directly. Ahsoka, Qui-Gon interjected. The optics, I am afraid, are all there are to go on without more information. The matter of perspective is not what is being debated, only intention at this point. Masters, forgive me in advance for being direct and perhaps in some cases rude, but think for a moment. Anakin could have chosen to take residence on thousands, tens of thousands of other worlds. Why this world? She paused but held up a hand to prevent anyone else from disturbing her following words out of turn. The place must have meaning to him. Some would say I know him better than most, and I feel I do, so please trust my instincts and me. Ahsoka finished with a sincere look and a tear in the corner of her right eye. Kawani was shifting uncomfortably, seated cross-legged close to the small fire, wondering why these two were having such a challenging time seeing her reason. However, extraordinarily little explanation was given, and much trust was asked. She supposed that her instinct to trust Ahsoka ultimately profoundly affected her opinion on the matter. She had already trusted her life to this Togruta more times than she had reason to fear for it the past few days, a bond that these two would not know, and, from her understanding through context, never would. Master Yoda released his breath, bringing a short, stubby hand to his forehead. Prevent you from leaving, I will not. Understand, I do, the need for closure. However, care must be taken to prevent the Emperor from interceding. Again, I insist this isn't about me, Ahsoka said with a hint of exasperation. For lack of a better term at the moment, I am asking you to unlearn what you have learned, Master. That got his attention entirely. Mustafar was important to the Republic for only one reason in the past, which had nothing to do with Anakin at the time. Four sensitive children were hidden there, in seclusion by Sidious, if you recall, and I believe there are still clues left hidden that could help me determine where to focus my attention. They have not stopped in any endeavor to identify and segregate four sensitive beings of any age, quite frankly, and that is a travesty. She paused, unsure how to phrase her following statement. Ahsoka, speak your mind, tell them, Kawani encouraged her. Master Yoda cracked a knowing smile as he glanced slowly in Kawani's direction, nodding. Master Qui-Gon, I feel you would have understood this had you been in my situation, as your need to be heard, sometimes defiantly, was almost legendary. She began and paused again, taking a deep breath. Master Yoda, I do not understand this. She spread her arms wide with an expressive look around the small dwelling. The need for secrecy and hiding I do, but to disengage fully? We lose much ground behind the scenes daily to the workings of a fully operable and engaged empire, yet our leaders offer no support or guidance except by chance? With Kawani's help, we have learned of Kino, one place in a galaxy full of many. I ask you, Master, reconnect, if but for a moment, and see. The truth is out there, Ahsoka finalized with a deep exhale. There was no sound in the hovel for a few minutes, yet no measure of palpable tension prevented it. Her words seemed to cascade to every corner and crevice the residence offered, a cleansing of truth bathing it and everyone in it, non-corporeal or organic, in a much-needed wash of honesty. Master Qui-Gon's image folded its hands into his robes, with a subtle nod to Ahsoka and a short winking assuring her he would have taken the same stance as she had suggested. Kawani beamed with pride as she looked back at Ahsoka with a mix of dignity, self-respect, and honor. Master Yoda widened his eyes slightly as the last syllables of her statement faded from his hearing, then began to close as he lowered his head. Time seemed to slow for all present. The always audible cacophony, the sounds of life outside dialed down its volume, yet not from menace of any sort, but seemingly out of respect for what was transpiring inside the unassuming domicile. The dancing firelight, the only accurate measure of reality, tamed its wild nature to align with the moment. Master Yoda leaned heavily upon his gimmer stick, and for the first time in her life, Ahsoka saw a single tear fall from his eye and streak down his cheek. It pooled for an instant at his chin, before breaking away from the tensive hold his skin had and fell slowly to the ground, landing with a small splash of dried dirt at his feet. Yoda picked up his chin and opened his eyes to shroud Ahsoka in the warmest gaze she had ever felt from any being. Understand your concern, I do. Defensive, it is pointless to be, as friends here we all are, he mustered with a shaking voice. Danger, my presence would incite, as searching the Emperor and his minions are for anyone surviving the purge. He hobbled over to an exposed root on the ground a few paces from where he stood, and with audible effort seated himself before continuing. My reasons are many, Ahsoka, yet for my safety I am unconcerned. My lightsaber, lost it was, and my duel was Sidious. Disconnected from the Force, I must remain until its whereabouts are confirmed. With it, find me he could. More terrible destruction upon the galaxy he could wage, or perhaps even beyond. My memories he would enslave, my knowledge, what he cannot learn through teachings of the Sith, he would take for himself. Understand you must the importance of that fact. Ahsoka understood immediately, but was unwilling, nor did she feel it warranted, to retract her statement. She sensed there was quite a bit more he could have added, and probably would if she would have pressed the matter, but his answer was sufficient in its directness and most certainly in its point. Ahsoka, show it to him, Qui-Gon interjected. Ahsoka needed no prodding and knew precisely what he was referring to. Master, this came into our possession, nodding in Kawani's direction, through an altercation with a Niktochi named Anaeum Moss, on Tatooine of all places. Again, a nod toward Kawani signified the us, as she removed the gold hilt of Master Windu's saber from her belt and presented it to Master Yoda. His eyes widened again as he looked upon the hilt, his mouth open in surprise. Unfamiliar the name is, however relevant the saber is to our conversation, Yoda said, barely audible, reaching out to touch the item. The hollow we stumbled across presented this as partial payment for a contract on my capture, Ahsoka added. Contracted by whom? Yoda said, looking up at Ahsoka. Pestage, and by extension, no doubt, Sidious. Carefully you must tread, Ahsoka. Precisely the fear I mentioned. With that in your possession, to Master Windu, you may lead them if he yet lives, Yoda said with a genuinely concerned tone. Possibly, Master, but I have no direction nor place to begin searching. I don't even feel that is my destiny, to be honest. I barely knew the man, she said flatly. In all honesty, his disdain for my master kept our paths separate, almost exclusively. Misdirected your presumptions are, Ahsoka. A great respect and admiration Master Windu held for Skywalker, Yoda interjected quickly. Too much like himself, Anakin was, he said quietly, trailing off. There is much I do not know about many things, it seems, Ahsoka said with a hint of annoyance. Notorious for subtlety, Master Windu was, Yoda exclaimed, Master Qui-Gon nodding in complete agreement. All well and good, but not helpful at present. Apologies for the directness, but there is more. Ahsoka broke the interlude. Ahsoka gripped the hilt of Master Windu's saber, stood back slightly, and ignited the blade. The immediate snap-hiss response was not lost on her onlookers. How is this possible? Qui-Gon asked, genuinely befuddled. I know, it surprised me too. The power cell should be long dead. The only way it could have been replaced is by its creator, or someone extremely powerful in lightsaber construction. This may seem off topic, but do you know of Quinlan Voss? Ahsoka asked. Of course, came the shared response from both masters. Well thought out, Ahsoka. What I was going to suggest precisely, that is, yet Master Yoda added. Her blank stare in return prompted Yoda to elaborate. Aid you greatly his ability would, if not to determine Master Windu's present condition, behind what transpired, the truth may be found. He concluded. Ahsoka understood his meaning quite well, as her primary objective was the truth behind the lies. To learn what had truly transpired in the Chancellor's office the day Masters Windu, Kit Fisto, Aegon Kolar and Cess-18 were rumored to have placed Palpatine under arrest and by many accounts set forth the downfall of the Jedi Order. Shaking her head to do her best to remain on topic, "Do you know if he is still alive, and if so, where he can be found?" she asked quickly. "Where precisely, no," Qui-Gon interjected, although Debarrick would be a good starting point to finding him, as many of the refugees he has aided seem to end up there. Yoda whirled around to face Qui-Gon with that speed again, belying his age. "I am not completely without resources, Master Yoda," Qui-Gon spoke before Yoda could, giving his old friend a quick wink. "And yes, he is alive," facing Ahsoka again, "to answer your question." Ahsoka gave Kawani a knowing glance, and she filed the information away entirely on cue. Extinguishing the blade, she returned the hilt to her belt and hesitated briefly before moving on to the next subject for Master Yoda's ears. She slid her right hand over the hilt of her newest addition and almost reeled back from the ice-cold surface. Determined not to make a scene and to just get this over with, she took the hilt and held it out for Master Yoda's inspection. "Master, initially I intended to ask for your guidance in deciphering what was happening to me. I believe I have answered my questions regarding most of that simply by being here, but I need to inquire about certain aspects of what is regarded as dark side teachings." Failing to mention the saber in her hand did not escape Yoda's notice, but he decided to attempt a more assertive approach in any case. He narrowed his eyes, studying her for a moment. "Ahsoka, your debriefing of your Mortis adventure, you remember well?" he finally asked. "Of course I do," she said, wondering what that had to do with anything and slightly taken aback by it being mentioned twice now by the two masters she had sought out. "Pertain it does to every question you could manufacture," he said flatly. Ahsoka took a moment to connect the dots in her mind. The conclusion, however, remained elusive. "Spoken at great length, Master Obi-Wan and I have talked about those particular events over the years," Yoda said, looking remarkably older than he had only moments before. "Bound themselves to you the same forces that bound Skywalker, to a greater degree perhaps. A paradox of sorts, no? Enslaved to the son, the daughter's sacrifice? Catch your notice, none of this has?" He could see clearly that his message was being heard, and more importantly, understood with the widening of the Togruta's eyes. The diminutive Jedi Grand Master pushed on. "The Father, Ahsoka, to whom is his place given?" Yoda let the message find its mark, her facial expressions working through his reasoning and with prominent recognition. "Seemingly at will, you can enter and withdraw from the realm of the Force, Ahsoka," he added, his eyes widening somewhat as he rested both hands over the top of his gimmer stick again. "Utilize powers you can that before these eyes have never witnessed." He motioned to the hole in the wall, serving as a window. Ahsoka followed his pointing finger to spot her Marai, posited sedately on the sill's smooth surface. "To you that creature is bound, follows you everywhere it does." Opening its beak, it uttered a simple hoot at her notice. Ahsoka's eyes shot wide open, and she audibly gasped in surprise as those dots finally found all the connections they needed to finish the image forming in her mind. She felt her knees grow suddenly weary, and an unnatural weakness wash over her. Kawani shot to her side as Ahsoka slid from her feet. She would have fallen into a heap had her friend not been there to support her. She felt her eyes flutter, and a blackness creep into her view that was ever expanding and threatening to steal her eyesight from her. Her mind slipped in and out of conscious. Concerned voices she thought she knew were in and out of focus. Finally, all senses relented, and the blackness consumed her entirely. The crunch of drifted snow as it gave way underfoot was a welcome relief, as were the ice formations adorning the rock face so far above the tree line. The swirling complexity of their surface refracting the setting sunlight in all directions. The night was close, but she was near enough to the tree line and the path down that would provide a cover when the evening winds redistributed the snow cover into a blinding cloud. However, Ahsoka was content to embrace the view before her. Alderaan's sun was at her back, and the capital city of Aldera lay before her, sidling the expansive royal palace in a brilliant display of color. The tall spires of the palace, adorned with golden ornamentation, reflected the light onto the city proper, which was well kept and equally adorned throughout. She felt no sense of urgency nor weight of burden. There was only a peace she had long sought, a peace she felt shared by all. Only the wind could be heard, just the precursor to the daily gale that would follow, but she thought the serenity it spoke, a cleansing of sorts, was exceedingly long overdue. She pulled the hood back from her montrals and let the chill air soothe her skin as she closed her eyes and breathed deeply through her nose. The air was fresh, clean, and energizing, a rugged contrast to the smog-choked filth she remembered on Coruscant. It felt like another life, one last breath before she reslung her pack and headed back down. The breeze brought a single note to her hearing, and she looked toward the source. Perched daintily on a small rock exposed to the snow was her Marai, or the Marai, she was never quite sure. It hooted again at her notice, just a single solitary hoot. "I know, little guy, we're going." The creature fluttered its wings for a moment to shake the snow loose, then took wing to land at her shoulder, and together they began the short trek to the high road leading out of the Triple Horn Pass. She was aware of her surroundings as the snow gave way to thatch and shrub and finally thick forest and startling patches of bright green grasses and wildflowers of all sorts, life rattling, humming, and buzzing all about her. With the ease of travel, sometimes it's nice to just put boot to ground, she thought. She meandered the little, if ever used, thoroughfare and broke away for a considerably underused path that led to the northern gardens of the palace. Her feet, and those of the princess security detail in an endless search for the rascally Leia's exploits, shared this path with no one. It was hers alone, a promise made by Bail to keep his door open to her should she need it. She scarcely took him up on that, for his safety, until now. "Bail, the time has come. You need to leave," she said matter of fact. "We've been over this. I will not leave while the people cannot," Bail returned just as smoothly. The two, the two stood on the expansive balcony overlooking the triple horns just outside his palatial office. "We haven't the ships nor the time, Ahsoka, and where would we go? We've been marshaling the galaxy's refugees for over a decade. Aldera by itself serves as home to over 800 million. Crevasse, another 700, Sanctuary, Montar, Sile. The list is endless, and more refugees arrive by the day." Losing his composure somewhat, he shook his head in irritation. She was right. "Bail, I understand your concerns, but you are not the few. You serve the many, and with Mon Mothma in exile, yours is the last sane voice in the Senate. You would ask me to choose myself, that of my family over my people, Ahsoka? Frame it however you'd like, but even the idea is inconceivable to me. Don't ask again," he said with a renewed measure of calm. They both turned to view the mountainscape again. "You two at it again, I see," Bria said angelically, her voice almost a song, Ahsoka always thought, as the woman walked lightly through the wavering divide. It was easy to identify with her people when she spoke. "She insists we leave, my love. Something, again, about impending doom," Bale said, half turning, outstretching his hand to his wife. "Apologies, Ahsoka," he quickly added. "Sarcasm is a gift I somewhat lack," kissing Bria gently on the cheek. "I just feel so distracted these days." "That he is," Bria said with a smile. "The two of you could do with some downtime. You've been running yourselves ragged for ages." "That is an understatement," Ahsoka said flatly, something wavering within the force that pulled her attention away from the dramatic view the overlook provided and toward the sky above. "2 more meetings tonight alone, my dear. No rest for me," Bale responded, looking out onto the city. Ahsoka felt a tinge of what she could not say, but something was off. "Where is Leia?" Bale telegraphed a look to her that she caught immediately. Unfortunately, so did Briha. "Yes, Bale, where is our daughter?" "On her way to Yavin, I hope," Bale said straight away, not having the patience for elusive negotiations. "Yavin? Why?" Briai asked with a nondiscreet look of concern. Why is it so dark? Bale wasn't even listening to his wife. What are you talking about? Briha was becoming quite worried. Ahsoka looked down over the sprawling city below her vantage, surprised she didn't notice the darkness herself. The sun was down, but the moon should be out in full. Briha just stared at Bale, wondering why, of all times, he was evading her questions. Briha, look! He waved his hand out before him, and she finally did. The works would have illumination in full force if the moon would not have been full, which it is supposed to be, Briha. She looked and was surprised that she, too, had not noticed. I suppose I just took it for granted. Now is the worst time to be doing things like that, Ahsoka chimed in, gaze turning to the heavens again with ever-squinting eyes. A flutter passed where the moon should have been, and she took 3 unintentional steps forward, focusing intently on that spot in the sky. The flutter that continued brought with it a dim light this time. She closed herself entirely from her immediate surroundings and willed the Force to aid her perception. The dim light began to waver between bright and star-like to that of a planet's refraction. She realized a moment later that she was seeing the sun's reflection off something metallic, something manufactured, something enormous. The truth hit her harder than anything ever could as the moon finally returned to the night sky, eclipsed by the empire between it and them. Why here? She thought. All the information the rebels had amassed over the last few months was undoubtedly accurate, but why was it here? A second truth slammed into Ahsoka's psyche. Bale, you said Leia was on her way to Yavin? Yes. Why? Bale both answered, then asked frantically. Because she isn't, Ahsoka stated. Bale turned from stately and distinguished to disheveled and crazed as he shot glances in all directions. Not here. There, she said with a finger pointed to the heavens. Bale followed her finger. I don't see anything, nothing at all, he screamed, pulling on his hair with one hand. Ahsoka felt the impending doom deep within her, the inevitable incineration about to be unleashed. There would be no pain. Obliteration is painless. She closed her eyes, dropped her outstretched arm, and blew her final breath as a flash of green sped toward them.